Muy buenos días, muy buenas tardes a todos. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos en otro Conversando Concisos. Mi nombre es Edgar Rojas, una vez más desde Estados Unidos. Nuestro colega Andrés Almanza, ¿estás todavía en Colombia o ya de regreso en Panamá, Andrés?
No, no, ya, buenas tardes, buenos días, Edgar. Ya estoy en Panamá.
Ah,
Yo el
bueno,
sábado
ah, bueno.
tengo
Excelente,
más
excelente.
calor.
Excelente. Bueno, a todo, la conversación de hoy va a ser muy interesante, Andrés. Tenemos un invitado especial, un colega mío que trabaja en Tata Consulting Services, TCS, se llama Quinn Banks. Es un director aquí en el grupo nuestro y es un experto en el tema de Metaverse o el metaverso. Pero antes de comenzar con Quinn, a todos la invitación a que nos acompañen si eran CISOs o directores de ciberseguridad y nos quieren acompañar en el evento de CISOs LATAM Summit el 5 y 6 de octubre en Santa Marta. Visiten la página del evento tacticaledge.co y regístrense. El equipo revisará la información suministrada y pues si el perfil cumple con los objetivos para poder enviar la invitación, les estaremos enviando la invitación. Es un evento muy interesante. Andrés ha estado en todos los eventos desde Cartagena hasta el de Santa Marta el año pasado y la verdad es un evento muy, pero muy bueno. Y este va a estar espectacular. La verdad no puedo esperar eh, que llegue el 5 de octubre, Andrés, para estar en Santa Marta
Sí,
con todos los amigos y las
así
amigas.
es.
Pero bueno, vamos a conversar con Quinn. We have an issue. Quinn is connected. He can listen. He can see us, but we cannot see Quinn. So we're just going to do it old style, Andres, and everyone listening. We're just going to go. You get to see our pretty faces. Yay. And you'll get to listen to Quinn. Quinn is the ghost voice in the background. So, Quinn, I appreciate you being here. Thanks so much. I'm sorry about the technology issues, but we need to roll forward, roll on, as we say, right?
Exactly. Thank you, Edgar, for the great introduction. Quinn Banks. Just to give you a brief of my background so you guys have some context. I've worked in technology for probably over 15 years. I have worked very heavily in mobile app development, mobile game development, some console game development. I've built agile teams, development teams for Farmers Insurance. I've worked at Ring, the security camera company, and Amazon. I've often worked at Procore Technologies, and I've had my own startups periodically here and there. We've built some pretty big apps in the early days of the iPhone. I have a deep passion for augmented reality, so you'll probably hear some of that if we can get to it today. Hopefully, you guys will invite me back. Maybe we can do a part two because there's a lot
Oh,
on the
yes.
metaverse. And I think that's how I open this up. So I'm sure everybody has heard all the hype about metaverse. And if you notice, I do not use the precursor, the,
That.
in front of metaverse because there's one, it's purely conceptual right now, and two, it's still something that is growing, and essentially will be more than one. And I think the best way to look at metaverse, and I caution everybody, the term metaverse is becoming kind of the de facto term for everything, kind of like Xerox. You've ever heard that? Oh, go Xerox it, or let's Google it. Everybody says they're building metaverse. And to be honest with you, metaverse is something that is still conceptual, and we're only building the breadcrumbs today. But I think the only way to look at it is if we take a step back and look at some of our technology history, starting with the internet. We'll just start with Web 1.0. I think you remember back in the early days when the internet first started, Web 1.0, it was essentially read only. You had a bunch of static pages. It was for research. You could only consume information. There was none of what we have today. It was very basic, very bland. And many of those research papers were isolated on various computers around the world. It wasn't until they were connected that we get the internet. So that brings us to Web 2, which essentially is, I think, the easiest way to think of it as read and write. Web 2 started to bring more dynamic pages. You had company profiles, you had company pages, you had websites, you had the beginnings of blogs. You did not have what we have today, where you have dynamic search engines, artificial intelligence, data streaming. But Web 2.0, again, is read and write. I think where we are today is Web 2.5, where we're inserting, we not only have the read and write capability, but we're moving to a space where we will actually own our data. And this is extremely important when we start looking at Metaverse, because the underlining or the basis to Metaverse is the ability to own your data. Think about it today. Most of us play games or we buy something online. Let's say you're playing Fortnite or Apex. You buy a bunch of gear for your avatar. Right now, that gear only sits on those company servers, whether it's Epic or EA. That only sits on their servers. So you don't really own it. You're kind of licensing it. The future is when you purchase something online, you will actually own the rights to it. And then those ownerships will transfer across multiple platforms.
So let me stop you
Um,
right there, Quinn. So that's basic.
sure,
That's NFTs, correct?
you got it. You're reading my mind, Ed. You're good, man. That's where I was going. This is the essence of NFTs,
Okay.
non-fungible tokens, where you own the rights to that information. You own that right to that asset, which brings up some interesting questions about NFTs. Um, if you're an artist, according to NFTs, if you're an artist and you sell your art, you should be able to receive some residual income based on that art. So imagine if Van Gogh were alive today and he created his artwork and it was an NFT, he would still get some residual income no matter how many times that piece of artwork was sold. But the person who purchased it is essentially the owner. So the NFTs are supposed to essentially pay back the creator. And at some point, I think in some of the writings for NFTs, if the purchaser wants to relinquish their ownership, they can actually give this back to the original owner. But that's a whole nother
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
So yeah, Web 2.5, the easiest way to remember it is read, write, and creation. So we create and we own it. Web 3 is essentially what everybody's talking about. Web3 brings us to all of the um, Web3 is essentially the conversions of all the technology that we've been looking at over the past, what we'll be talking about in the future. So XR, extended reality, AR, augmented reality, VR, um, AI, machine learning, cloud, blockchain, crypto, NFTs, 5G and 6G networks, as well as um, edge computing. All of these will make up Web 3. But we're here to talk about Metaverse. So Metaverse is pretty interesting. It's not something that has most people think the Metaverse is pretty new, and it's not. Essentially, the term Metaverse has been around. I think the first time it was coined was in a book by Neil Stevenson called Snow Crash. It was written in 1992. And I will confess, I have only read half the book. I cannot get through the story. It is killing me, man. It is just badly written. It is so bad. But the premise of the story is this guy is living his entire life in this virtual world. And he's a pizza deliverer by day and he's a superhero in the metaverse. So like, this is one of the first times that we hear this virtual existence that people have been talking about recently. I think another instance is Ready Player One. I think all of us have seen Ready Player One, where this takes us into a dystopian world where our physical world is dying, and so we have this virtual escape. And Ready Player One spawned a second book, Ready Player Two. But again, Ready Player One gives us a setting where our day-to-day activities function in a metaverse where we shop, love, play, entertain, and essentially do business. And I think that's where we are today is the idea of how do we combine the virtual world and the physical world and create a new space for us to exist in. Um, Honestly, if you look up the metaverse today, you'll get 20 different definitions of it. You'll get 20 different people telling you. Futurists will tell you it's one thing. Entrepreneurs will tell you another thing. I think the easiest way to think of the metaverse is, it's a convergence of the physical world with the virtual or digital world. It will be an immersive experience. AR, VR, and MR will be the entry points, but it will be a self-sustaining, secure, community-driven economy using digital currencies, cryptocurrency, crypto tokens potentially, to purchase and own goods in the physical and digital world. So owning them at the same time. I use this analogy. I was at a friend's house, which is this huge house in Malibu, big multi-million-dollar house, and I was explaining to her about the digital world or digital twins. And I said, imagine your house, somebody digitizes it and puts it in the metaverse. And I said, you own your house, you have the deed. She goes, absolutely, I do. I said, well, imagine in the virtual world. The question is, do you own that property in the virtual world? And she looked at me and she goes, who's making these decisions? I said, we're not there yet. So keep that in the back of your head as we talk more and more about the metaverse, where we start looking at regulatory, data protections, data privacy. I think this is a whole nother conversation I know Ed wants to dive into, but the whole security piece of it, I think, is a whole conversation.
Absolutely,
But
absolutely.
that, yeah,
But let me stop you there, Quinn, because you said a whole bunch of things,
sure.
and again, we have a lot of CISOs that are connecting here, and
Hmm.
will watch us in the future, hopefully. Um,
Hmm.
and one of the things that we want to make sure is that we understand metaverse is already here in some sort of action, right? I mean, it's already here. It's already being used, already being implemented. And so, the question is, how do CISOs of today,
Hmm.
you know, what should they focus on? Because again, this is not something that it's in the future. This is something that is right now. I mean, we have a lot of examples. For example, right, we have a lot of use cases that companies are already
Hmm.
using. So marketing, the marketing teams in companies are already taking advantage of the metaverse, right? So the CMO and that group is already talking to the CEO or maybe to the board of directors, and they're already getting a lot of funds to go into the metaverse, right?
Hmm.
So from a privacy security perspective, the CISOs need to be involved in those conversations, correct?
Yes.
You're absolutely right. And let me just kind of fine tune your statement just a little
Sure.
bit. So we are at the very beginning of metaverse. We're building these standalone. So they are metaverses. We
Okay.
have not created the metaverse until all of these are connected and they're decentralized. So there's a term DAO, decentralized autonomous organizations, meaning the way we do business today will probably have to change in order for us to connect all of these metaverses to create the metaverse. I hate to use the, but at some point it's like the internet. We'll get there. At some point we'll have to change this. And decentralization is that vein that runs as the connector between all of them. So in the ideal world, a decentralized metaverse would be no central control, no central organization, where it is a group effort, like a conglomerate.
Ah, that's why when I'm doing the research about metaverse, and Andres, you're gonna love this, right? And I was saying, right, the marketing department is already using metaverse, and when you look at it, and Quinn, you just said it right there, you clarify a lot of stuff. You're talking about Sandbox, you're talking about Meta,
Mm.
you're talking what's
Yep.
another big one out there, Quinn, that people
Decentraland,
decentralized, right? So I see now what
Fortnite,
you're saying,
Roblox.
right? Roblox, exactly. So you see, Roblox is being
Yep.
used more, and it's funny because each one of them is used by different type of organizations, right? Like Roblox it seems like a lot of the sports. teams and everything are using Roblox. It's kind of strange
Hmm.
how they're being divided. So I see what you're saying about right now. There's there's metaverses, and they're
Yes,
isolated. They're not connected at this point.
they're not connected. So until they're connected, that's when we get metaverse. And so everybody's using the term, oh, we're building metaverse, we're building metaverse. You're building
Mhm.
pieces of it's like the early internet. It's like Web.0. We're between Web.0 and Web 2.0. We're really at Web.0, 1.0, where it's just all of these disconnected servers with information, and you had to have special access to each one of those. Where you couldn't do a search the way we do today with Google search at Web.0. So all of this has to be built, and it had to be built on a connected network. Now, also, Metaverse is going to require um, 5G and 6G, and we need new computational capabilities because if you consider Metaverse also incorporates that immersive experience, augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality. So now we go from megabytes and terabytes to gigaflops or zettabytes. I think at some point we're going to be moving massive amounts of data in the form of zettabytes,
And
which is huge. I
And
mean,
let me stop you there because again, from a CISO perspective, from a data privacy officer perspective, from the new data trust officer perspective, right? When we start
mhm,
talking about petabytes of information, that should start freaking, you know, getting all the red lights going crazy, like really like danger, danger, Mr. Robinson or whatever, danger, whatever that thing is from that movie, uh, because that's what we do, right? We focus on
right.
that data we focus and now the question is, Quinn, petabytes of what? What are they collecting?
Ah, excellent question. So let's say, and this is a real world case. I don't know how many of your CISOs have an Oculus headset, or I think it's
Yeah,
called MetaQuest now. They've changed it.
yeah.
They keep changing the name. Um, that has cameras that not only scan the room, but the new one is supposed to scan your face. So they're actually tracking eye movement, head movement. So imagine you're in a game and you look at something for more than 10 seconds. That is a data tag that gets sent. So they're tracking eye
that
movement, data, head movement,
that's your
eye
new cookie.
fluctuation, blinking. That is your new cookie, exactly. And then how do we protect that new cookie? We
Oh
have to
my
move
god.
it into some type of blockchain so that it is encrypted. Now, also, here's another thing that should drive CISO's mad. Metaverse, again, you're using avatars. How do you authenticate an avatar that is able to move from platform to platform? Is able to access their money, whether it's digital money or physical money, and is able to log in? How do you authenticate and then carry all of those assets with that avatar across multiple platforms when we connect these metaverses? And then I'll throw another one in there. And I think a lot of companies are making, and this is my opinion, but I'm going based on what I saw with mobile. I worked heavily in mobile. You remember when every company had their website,
Hmm.
and then mobile came along and everybody raced to build their website to run on a smartphone. Remember how bad those looked?
Yes.
You know why? Because they were doing a one to one.
Yeah.
They're saying, oh, well, the website should work on a mobile phone. The same thing is happening in these early stages of these metaverses, where everybody's like, oh, well, we'll just build a virtual mall, and everybody will go to the virtual mall. I don't know about you, but it freaks me out to go to the mall now, especially since COVID.
Yeah.
Why would I go to a VR mall when I should be able to bring it to me? Another good example is the medical institution has really embraced augmented reality and virtual reality for training our future doctors and surgeons. And I think it was Carnegie, one of the major medical schools. The professors were saying, okay, we brought in this augmented reality, but they had to reshape their entire um, training process because most of the time when you go to medical school, it's all lecture, right? So they were thinking, oh, we'll just create a virtual lecture hall. Why would somebody leave a physical lecture hall to go sit in a virtual lecture hall to watch a virtual professor? So the professors realized that they had to rethink their training methodologies. And actually now it's more exploratory. That's what virtual reality and augmented reality does. It increases that curiosity. So you want to get in, you want to see how the body works, and we can build those. You can see it. So the professor said, hey, rather than us standing up here and lecturing, why don't we just break up our students into pods, give them assignments to do research, and then we just walk around and give them direction. So here's a prime example of going from one to one. Oh, we'll just create a virtual lecture hall to, oh no, we need to rethink how we're going to teach based on this new technology. I think it's the same thing with many of the organizations. People are thinking, oh, I'm going to create a digital candy store. Why would I go to a digital candy store? It's going to a real candy store is an experience. You can smell it, you can pick up the candy, you can sample it. When you had it on the web, the convenience was being able to buy it on the web. When mobile came, you had the convenience of shopping anywhere and getting it quickly. Maybe Metaverse is you bring the virtual candy store to yourself, and then you use some IoT device to, like a drone, to deliver it to you instantaneously, right? Some personalized or special piece of candy. So I think not only is there a security challenge, but I think we're going down the path that we did when we went from web to mobile. Everyone's trying to do a one-to-one as opposed to thinking outside the box and creating brand new experiences from the ground up.
And this is a good point because again, we're seeing the use of metaverse. I mean, we're seeing the big
Mm-hmm.
adoption going. Basically, is the way forward. We cannot fight it, right? And I know
Yep.
when I talk to other fellow, consultants and other CISOs, a lot of us tend to make fun of NFTs. We're like the blockchains, right? We put it a Z at the end, and we make fun of this technology. But
Right.
we need to understand this technology. We need to accept this technology. We need to know that it's not FUD anymore. It's the way of the
Yeah.
future now, right? If some of us we're coming to the end of our career. We have like 7, 10 more years to go. Uh, and as they say, in some of the research I did, VR and AR has been around the corner. In the next 5 years, it will be adopted. We've been saying the same message for 30 years, right? Uh, but I think this time is for sure. And again, we're seeing real world utilization. We've seen companies that are already doing, like talent recruiting, right? In Meta, we've seen companies. Well, a lot of sports companies. Man City, for example, right? Manchester City.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, During the COVID, they started using, I think it was Oculus or something like that, to bring that
Mm-hmm.
experience to the people there. Those are things that are right now are like almost like beta type of testing, but it's thing that is going to come in. And again, as CISOs, and we've been talking about this in this program for the past 2, 3 years, we need to start changing that view, right? That cybersecurity it's a bolted on, it's an add-on, and we need to switch
Thank
it
you.
to being part of the business enabler. We are business enablers, so that when the CMO is having these conversations with the CEO about wanting to go into Meta or Decentraland, right? There has to be a connection. I mean, there's got to be a digital bridge that connects to our corporate infrastructure, right? So this, it'll be nice for the CMO to say, I already spoke with the CISO, and and we got controls, and we got monitoring, and we got mitigating stuff that allows us to do that securely. Um, how do you how do you recommend the CISOs start those conversations? You know.
That's an excellent point there. I mean, metaverse is here. I mean, you look at Fortnite. I mean, I think Second Life was probably the first iteration. Was like 2007, 2000? I forget when 2006 when Second Life was around. If you compare the numbers of Second Life to Fortnite Battle Royale, Second Life had 40,000 online monthly users.
It's a lot.
Fort no, Fortnite Battle Royale sees 750 million monthly players.
Wow.
Just let that knock around in your head for a while. And the question is, Metaverse and VR and all of this stuff is not new. It's been floating around for a while. Why is Fortnite Battle Royale so successful? Because we have so many platforms utilizing it. You can play it on a mobile device. You can play it on your mobile phone. You can play it on your console. You can play it on your PC. You can play it on your tablet. And at some point, somebody will release the headset, an AR-based headset, whether it's Apple or Meta will get their stuff together, or maybe it'll be Microsoft. Microsoft is, I think, pretty ahead of everyone else, but they're super expensive and they're focused on corporate. But if you think about it, this is a huge, huge area. And I mean, just to throw some more numbers out there so CISOs can kind of take this back. So JP Morgan entered Metaverse. You won't believe where they dropped their flag, Decentraland. I know you've heard of Decentraland.
Yeah.
And they're saying that it is $1 trillion annual revenue.
Mhm.
They dumped a ton of money into Decentraland.
Yes. Yes.
Sandbox, yeah, yeah, and
Sandbox.
Sandbox is another one. Yeah, Sandbox is another one where somebody purchased a
Adidas.
$500,000 virtual
Ad-
home.
Adidas purchased about 120, 170 something um, lands in Sandbox.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
So I mean, and it's funny. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, no, I was going to say, and Adidas goes ahead and we've heard about, trade marketing their virtual logos, right? Because
Yep.
that's already in there. And then you start wondering, well, why do you want to trademark your logos? And when you find out is that those logos are basically, we go back to the funny NFTs. What's NFTs used for?
The
Because that's
NFT.
a lot of the stuff that we'd say, well, what the hell? Who's buying NFT? It's a JPEG, right? It's like we're missing the
Yeah,
point, right? NFT,
we're missing the point. Yeah.
yes. NFT is almost like going to be almost like the IP right now, right? Like the Internet Protocol right now. Because as you said, there has to be a way for those NFTs to be able to go from Decentraland to Sandbox to Mana or whatever, right? There's got to be a way.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's going to be the protocol of choice once we
Exactly.
define one. And
Yeah.
and
I think it'll be NFT 2.0, not the current version we
not the
have. It
current.
appears to be broken.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, what we're saying, and again, we'll continue this conversation, because I know that you have like 2 more minutes to go. But where do we go? Where as CISOs, where do we go to learn more about metaverse, to learn more about blockchain, so that we get to the point NFTs, where we get to the point that we don't just make fun of it, right?
Right. I have my usual haunts. Venturebeat.com. I know several of the writers there. Um, Last night, I was up until almost 2 o'clock in the morning. There was a metaverse conference, which was at some strange
Wow.
hours. So I think it was just set up so people around the world could access it. And you had guys going through fashion, retail, NFTs, blockchain, and I mean, there's a lot going on out there. The conversations are really heavy around metaverse, and everyone's saying the same thing. It's being used as an interchangeable term. Be careful. Everyone's saying, "Oh, I'm building metaverse." You're building a virtual experience. Again, not until we have blockchain and NFTs and cryptocurrencies and all these other facets tied into it do we get there. Not to mention the underlining data protection, privacy protection. But I'll throw one thing in there too. I think the monetization model of making money off of people's data that is sustaining Meta. I think that's going to die once we own our own data. Because when you own your own data, you set whether or not you want to sell it and where you want to sell it. It is no longer a corporation's asset. It remains your asset. So I think that monetization model is going to change. So we're gonna have to look at new monetization models for metaverse
Yeah.
also.
Yeah. Well, Quinn, I know
Yeah.
you gotta run, so really appreciate your time. We definitely gotta come back because we just scratched the surface. We didn't even talk about governments adopting metaverse,
You know,
right? Seoul, South Korea is doing it. A whole bunch of countries are doing it. Companies are getting heavily involved.
Netherlands.
Adidas, Meta, everyone is
Yep.
getting involved. So we know it's coming, and we just gotta keep the conversation going. So Quinn, thank you so much for your time, man, and we'll
Thank you, gentlemen.
we'll invite you back. Y,
I'd love to come back.
thanks, buddy. See you later.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
man.
Have a wonderful day.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thanks for all.
Andrés, continuemos la conversación aquí entonces. Muy interesante, oye, salió mucha información. Y de nuevo,
Sí, de hecho, bueno, lástima que se tenía que ir. Yo le iba a
sí,
hacer una pregunta porque al final, escuchándolo, me quedé con una cosa chévere y es, entonces, metaverso puede ser definido como un ecosistema nuevo, ¿sí? Que tiene interacción de muchas cosas que están ahí en el aire, NTFs, blockchains, monedas, que todo esto como que cuando sea real, porque hay que decir, está aquí,
está
pero
aquí.
no es así como tan wow.
Ah, ahí está, ahí está la Metaverse
Aquí está
la-
la próxima usuaria del metaverso.
esa sí la va a usar bastante.
No lo
Esa es
dudes.
la generación del metaverso. Y entonces,
Sí,
mira, utilicemos a la niña, por ejemplo, como un ejemplo, sí, del metaverso. La información, como dice Quinn, la información que se está colectando en petabytes. Entonces, imagínate si ahora tenemos el tema de los niños en Facebook, desde que eran pequeños comenzamos con todas las fotos y todo. Facebook tiene toda esa información acerca de nuestros niños creciendo, más que nosotros, los padres, ¿no? Imagínate lo que va a
correcto.
suceder en el metaverso con estos niños que le van a escanear su cara, su avatar, su digital twin. Eso en el futuro, pero regresando ahora, regresando ahora sí, de nuevo, regreso al tema este que yo cómo nos afecta ahora. Como yo digo, el departamento de mercadeo están utilizando el metaverso.
Es que ese fue uno de los links que compartí precisamente de
Eh,
McKinsey, que es
exacto.
tremendo estudio que hacen de cómo ya las áreas de marketing están haciendo su apuesta, pues como,
¿Qué,
¿sí?
y, qué, qué, y como te iba a decir, qué oportunidad que tenemos los CISOs en América Latina de liderar estas conversaciones y de demostrar que somos habilitadores del negocio, de cambiar esa percepción. Tenemos una oportunidad importante que sí, como si
Pues,
a lo mejor no vamos a verlo en nuestras carreras, a lo mejor no vamos a tener tiempo de ver esta visión, pero hombre, tenemos la oportunidad de cambiar eso.
pero tú le diste un punto súper importante y yo estoy de acuerdo contigo. Esto es una gran oportunidad, como bien lo decías, para que nosotros podamos hacer ese switch de definitivamente dejar a un lado el de ser el doctor no, el
Ujú.
stopper, el lo que sea, y ser un verdadero business enabler, como lo decías.
¿Por qué?
Porque yo creo
Porque
que ahí hay un espacio, ¿sí?
es que
Hay un
tenemos
espacio.
todas las de ganar, porque eso es todo basado en tecnología. La persona de mercadeo, ellos no tienen la menor idea de tecnología. Ellos utilizan NFTs, ni siquiera saben qué es un non-fungible token. 100% garantizado que no saben
Simplemente
qué
lo usan.
significa. Lo usan, porque es una herramienta, es un vehículo. ¿Qué tal si nosotros llegamos y conversamos con esa conversación con los CMOs y les decimos, mira, hay manera de llegar, como dijo Quinn, en Fortnite, ¿cuánto fue que dijo? 730 y qué millones,
700.
700 millones de personas a nivel mundial. Yo digo inmediatamente, pucha, imagínate poder comenzar y colocar anuncios comerciales ahí dentro de esos productos, que uno le llegue. Si nosotros somos una en Colombia, digamos, por defecto, colombina, ¿sí? Que está en todo el mundo ahora con el tema de los dulces, comiencen a utilizar el metaverso para posicionarse a nivel mundial, que una de estas figuritas sale comiendo un bombombón. es, es impresionante. Y uno como CISO poder hablar con la gente de mercadeo, es que miren lo que podemos utilizar con la tecnología, educarlos en el buen uso de la tecnología. Eh, me
Ese es el
parece,
punto.
me parece una
Ese es el
opción.
punto. Porque Quinn sí decía algo bien importante y es, definitivamente uno de los desafíos va a ser el exacerbado número de datos. El primer artículo que compartí es un artículo de Tech Republic que habla preciso como de esos desafíos, chévere que él lo mencionó, metaverso y realidad virtual no son lo mismo, entonces,
No,
por ejemplo, en el artículo está especificado, oiga, tenga en cuenta que para VR, para Virtual Reality, ahí hay otro. Y las otras líneas que están marcadas con metaverso son desafíos que pueden ser distintos.
mm,
Pero lo que sí es cierto es que los datos van a estar, pues, obviamente en tensión, pues, porque va a haber más volumen.
mm.
La identidad, nada más con el solo hecho, la identidad, hablemos solamente de uno solo, que va a ser fundamental y esencial. Ahora
Es,
sí va
es,
a ser importante la identidad.
ahora sí,
Mucho más,
yo no iría a eso
mucho
voy.
más.
Yo diría, es importantísimo ahora porque ese es el tema de ahora.
Hoy,
Todos hablamos de
sí,
Zero Trust, todos hablamos de Zero Trust y Zero Trust comienza y termina con identidad. Se acabó el problema, ¿sí o no? Privacidad, que
exactamente.
ya estamos viendo el cambio, que ya no se habla de seguridad y privacidad, se habla solamente de privacidad y por defecto ya se sabe que viene seguridad. Y
Ya
no
se
estamos
sabe
hablando
que tiene que
solamente
estar.
acerca de tecnología, estamos hablando acerca de una manera diferente de pensar, una manera diferente de ver las cosas. Y como dice Quinn, por ejemplo, yo estaba en uno de los research para verlo bien, bien chévere. Meta tiene un algoritmo donde tú colocas tu foto, lo analiza y crea un avatar basado en tu foto. ¿Ok? Y
Sí.
tiene un trademark, lo está pidiendo una patente que diga para esa solución. ¿Dónde van a guardar esa información? ¿Quién es el dueño de ese avatar? ¿Es Meta el dueño de
Por
ese
ejemplo,
avatar?
exactamente, entonces esas son discusiones que ahorita ya empiezan a tener sentido. Un dato que es un avatar, que es una descripción personal y única teóricamente de un individuo,
Única,
que ha sido
supuestamente.
generada a través de la tecnología de una persona. ¿De quién es ese dato?
No
Si
solamente
ese
eso,
dato no se... ¿Sí?
exacto. ¿Y para qué se va a utilizar? Por ahora, la idea,
Bingo.
por
Y
ahora, por ahora la idea de la utilización de ese avatar como tú es para darte a ti
una
una, una
representación dentro del
representación,
espacio.
el famoso digital twin, dentro del espacio, ¿sí? ¿Por qué razón? Ahora es solamente para, ay, mira tan bacano, estoy aquí todo digital, bien chévere, ¿sí o no? Eh, pero en el futuro, no, es que vamos a utilizar tu avatar para identificarte. Es que como tenemos el algoritmo este de Meta, llegó hasta tus pupilas y tiene bien guardado
Bien
tus
definido
cosas
el
biométricas,
iris y entonces,
exacto, y todo eso. Entonces
exactamente.
vamos a utilizar eso, listo. Entonces ahora yo soy el que hay ahí. Se despiertan un poco de opciones y un poco de preguntas muy interesantes, que sí, de nuevo con Quinn, estamos al principio, estamos empezando eso. Pero en una lectura que leí ahí decía, tenemos que estar preparados porque todos los problemas que tenemos ahora de seguridad y privacidad en este momento los vamos a traer, ellos van a existir también en el metaverse. Si no lo podemos solucionar ahora, ¿cómo lo vamos a solucionar en un mundo que ni siquiera conocemos, con el cual no tenemos
Bingo.
experiencia?
Exacto. Y lo más probable es que eso también sea, o sea, los desafíos que tenemos hoy en nuestro mundo que conocemos se van a transportar al mundo del meta, obviamente exponenciados. ¿Sí? O sea,
Exacto.
eso es normal, se van a transportar.
Y,
Exponenciados en el término en que van a aparecer como nuevas modificaciones de lo que ya sabemos y lo
y,
nuevo.
y es muy interesante porque haciendo estos, el research y todo eso, ¿sabías que hay 5 nuevos modelos de negocios definidos en el metaverse? Yo no sabía eso.
No, no,
Hay, hay
no, no.
5, y para todos los que nos están escuchando, 5 modelos de negocio. Esto fue definido por Gartner, ¿no? Play to earn, eso ya lo sabemos, ¿no? El famoso play to earn, que uno juega para ganar y tal. ¿Uno qué gana? Uno gana
Con la
NFTs o
moneda.
uno gana criptomoneda, pero la criptomoneda que nos da ese metaverse. Acuérdate que Quinn dijo que esos no están conectados todavía. Entonces,
No,
cada metaverse tiene su propio play to earn y recibe los coins, recibe las monedas, criptomonedas que tú puedes intercambiar, en algunos casos hasta por efectivo, tu moneda local. Es muy interesante. Ese es uno. Otro, experience to earn. O sea, que experimente, tenga la experiencia para ganar. Y lo importante es que de acuerdo a esto, el primero fue enfocado hacia las mujeres. Y se me
Vea
olvidó quién
pues.
fue la empresa, pero es una empresa comestibles, donde salían con los NFTs, o salían y le decían, tomen una foto de usted comiendo, o usted con este NFT que le gustaría comer una galleta de strawberry con chocolate chip, algo así, ¿no? Y entonces, ¿qué sucede? Que de acuerdo a los estudios de cuántas personas seleccionan ese NFT, se toman las fotos y todo eso, ya saben, están haciendo un product research, ya saben qué producto es el que se va a vender más de una manera simple, económica. Pero de nuevo, ahí viene el tema de mercadeo. El otro, move to earn, ese es muy interesante. Este es acerca de ser activo.
Mm,
Ya sabemos el tema de que se monta el Fitbit y todo eso, ¿no? Que para los ejercicios y todo eso. Pues las empresas están saliendo ahora con, por ejemplo, compre estos zapatos, ¿sí? Estos zapatos para correr, descargue esta aplicación y muestren ustedes cómo usa esos zapatos. Y entre más activo es o más activa es, usted se gana unos criptomonedas, que luego los puede cambiar por NFTs. Los NFTs pueden ser los logos de ellos, donde entonces cuando tú compras los zapatos, los mismos zapatos para tu digital twin en el mundo de metaverso, puedes colocarle el logo de esta empresa en tus zapatos, entonces tú veas todo brandeado. Cosas que en este momento no se pueden hacer, pero se están haciendo. Otro es
qué chévere.
build to earn, donde tú construyes para, para ganar. De nuevo, Quinn habló acerca de la empresa que compró un poco de terreno virtual para construir. Eso es lo que hizo Adidas. Adidas compró 170 y pico pedazos de tierra en Sandbox. Invirtió una millonada de dólares en algo que ellos dicen que en el futuro va a ser 300, 500 veces más. Y ese es muy importante y ese es muy interesante que yo lo voy a buscar, learn to earn, en el tema de
Bueno,
educación. Y
oiga, eso está
para que lo
buenísimo.
coloques ahí, Edverse, para que lo coloques ahí, en vez de Metaverse es Edverse, y es de educación, Education Verse, Edverse. Y es tecnología, es un multiverse que se enfoca en el tema de nueva manera de educación virtual, que es lo que estaba hablando Quinn con la Carnegie Mellon y todo eso, cómo comenzaron a enfocarse.
Sí,
Imagínate, eso me interesa mucho.
pero ya lo puse, de hecho lo puse y entonces ya hay una empresa comercial, por lo que veo.
Ya hay un grupo que se llama Edverse y pueden hacer Google
Es
acerca de
adverse.com.
Edverse. A ese es, imagínate. Entonces, mira, ya se está utilizando, no me digan que no existe. Entonces nosotros como CISOs debemos entender esto, ¿sí? Porque imagínate que la gente se conecte a estos desde sus computadoras, pues, que ahora todas las computadoras personales están casi en un 100% conectadas a las empresas. Entonces, ¿cómo controlamos esto? Estos son temas muy importantes y como CISOs nosotros tenemos que estar metidos en esas conversaciones. Y ahora de nuevo, eso está liderado por mercadeo en nuestras empresas, porque son los que están más avanzados. Mercadeo siempre son los más avanzados en utilizar nuevas tecnologías. Lo sabemos.
Eso sí,
¿Por qué no estamos
somos
nosotros en conversaciones con la gente de mercadeo desde el principio para ayudarles con el tema de conexión seguras, viendo al futuro?
sí,
No lo vamos a parar,
eso me
sino
parece, de
vamos,
verdad que me parece una
habilitamos.
muy,
¿Mm?
muy buena idea y creo que me sumaré a tu iniciativa porque, no, no, porque me parece súper interesante. O sea, es que lo que tú dijiste me parece como muy, yo diría que utilizaría mis palabras filosóficas, muy inspirador. Es una muy buena forma de empezar a romper ese paradigma. Todos estamos preguntando, bueno, pero ¿cómo el CISO deja de ser un stopper? ¿Cómo? Este podría ser
Para mí es una
tiene que
oportunidad.
empezar desde cero,
Es
porque
una,
los
es una,
otros tienen que construir muchas vainas. En cambio, en este no. En este tiene que empezar. todos estamos en las mismas condiciones.
Y ahora, y
Yo
ahora,
creo que sí puede ser un buen...
y ahora les hago una pregunta a todos los que nos están escuchando y los que nos van a ver, o- ojalá, en el canal de YouTube de Tactical Edge. ¿Cuántas veces nosotros no nos hemos burlado de blockchain como tecnología? Yo me he burlado de
Sí.
blockchain. Es que los nuevos productos de ciberseguridad vienen con blockchain y AI y todo eso. Pero no se burla porque mercadeo utiliza todas esas palabras que, que no las utilizan porque no es lo que ellos dicen que significa. Es otros, ¿sí? Pero en realidad, ¿cuántos de nosotros nos hemos puesto a hacer la tarea de entender esta tecnología de blockchain? Algunos de nosotros lo hemos hecho, pero no a profundidad. Lo hemos hecho hasta aquí, que cómo funciona, con cripto y todas esas cosas. La verdad hay que tomar tiempo y entender bien esa tecnología de blockchain, entender bien lo del NFTs, muy importante, porque esos dos son los que vienen y como dijo Quinn, el NFT va a ser el protocolo, parece que puede ser el protocolo de la conectividad de estos metaversos en un futuro. Entonces, muy interesante todo lo que se conversó aquí con Quinn en 30 minutos. Mira todas estas preguntas que salieron, Andrés, y todo
Edgar,
esto. Aquí estoy.
no supe si fui yo, si fuiste tú, bueno, ahí te quedaste. Ok.
Ah, bueno, listo. Entonces, pero bueno, la tarea, la tarea para todos nosotros es empaparnos acerca de esta nueva tecnología porque la verdad que viene.
Sí, hay una
Ya,
tarea muy importante que
ya,
tenemos que seguir investigando. Yo creo que eso y una muy buena oportunidad.
exacto. Y entonces, bueno, gracias a todos por acompañarnos. La invitación a la próxima semana una vez más. Tenemos otro invitado especial, lo estamos contactando. Conversaciones muy, muy interesantes. Seguimos pues entonces conectados. Bendiciones a todos. Andrés, saludos.
Cuídense mucho, cuídate que estés bien.